Welcome to the G5 Hive and our next installment of our Worker Bee series, where we deep dive into the G5 college football landscape with the folks that know the teams the best. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. And if you're listening on podcast form, please rate and review. Today, we'll be taking a look at the Kennesaw State Owls, who finished 3-6 last season in the FCS. This year, they made the move up to the FBS and joined Conference USA. They wrapped up their 2024 spring practice with their spring game on April 19th. We have a special guest joining us today. He is a sports copy editor for the Kennesaw State Sentinel, co-host of the Owl Chat podcast, sports correspondent for the Marietta Daily Journal, and an Atlantic Sun and Conference USA hoops guy. He is Kai Millette. Kai can be found at Owl Chat podcast on X. Welcome to the show, Kai.
Thanks so much for having me, man. That was a sweet intro. Did you put that together?
I did. It's been a labor of love, man, doing those for every single team. Some teams are a lot more difficult than others. But yeah, I tell you, the thing I enjoy about it the most is like when I'm researching like things to put in there is like just finding out the history of programs and things that I never knew about. So from that standpoint, I really truly enjoyed it.
Sure, man. Well, lucky for you, there's not a long way to go back with us. So you probably could have gotten the whole update in a couple of minutes.
Well, tell us a little bit about yourself and what led you to sports journalism and covering Kennesaw State and how long you've been doing it.
Yeah, so it's been what I've wanted to do since I was a kid. When I kind of put together, I didn't win the genetic lottery and wasn't going to be, a pro athlete. And I was like, well, I still want to be around the game. I'm a diehard sports fan. Wanted to do that all throughout middle school, high school, got to college, started writing for the student paper. Started covering our basketball team, and at the time the program was a disaster, and then they make this magical run all the way to the NCAA tournament for the first time ever, and I'm one of the only guys there as far as media goes, so I get access to all of this, and that gets me in with covering football, all the other sports, start gaining a little bit of a community on Twitter, I guess. And then reach out to my partner, John, who I run the podcast with. We started the podcast, and we're now a team of 4. We're just about at 100 episodes. We've been doing it for a little over a year now. So we're all about KSU. That's pretty much all we do. And we like to think nobody does it like we do. So.
Absolutely, man. We started just almost a year ago as well. And, the G5 teams just don't get any coverage from the national media. So it's awesome to see folks like yourself, kind of deep diving and covering those athletics for those schools.
Yeah, man, it's a lot of fun. It's actually kind of fun when you're the only ones who get to do it. Because, you are who everybody goes to for the little things. So it's a blast. And we enjoy serving the niche that we do.
What's the general feeling around town and campus about the Owls moving up to the FBS and joining Conference USA?
I think cautiously optimistic is the best way to put it. This season expectations aren't high. I think the Vegas over/under for the win total is about 2.5. We know it's going to be a process. We know it's going to take time. But I think people do have a lot of faith in the administration and the coaching staff we have in place. We also like where we're at geographically. I mean, there's so much talent here. And, one of our biggest issues playing in the state of Georgia is on Saturdays, we got to compete with Georgia and Georgia Tech to get people in the stands. And moving to Conference USA, throughout the month of October, like all of our games are on weeknights. So we don't have to compete with those bigger schools. We can get butts and seats. But yeah, it was a now or never move, it seemed like. I think the year after they changed the entry fee from FCS to FBS from $5,000 to $5 million. And I think we caught wind of that, and we're like, okay, if we're going to do this, we got to do this now, which, is going to set us back a little bit in terms of being successful. Like it's going to take longer than it would if we had maybe waited 2 or 3 years, but we're ready for it. We're here. It's exciting. Definitely cool to see some of these teams on the schedule, like a Middle Tennessee State or a Louisiana Lafayette, San Jose State, these teams that have been Group of 5 for a long time. and you're used to seeing play in bowl games in early December and that kind of thing. So we're excited, keeping our expectations at bay, but for the most part, it's optimism.
Can you share a little bit about the history of football there at Kennesaw State?
Yeah, so like I said before, it's not very long. The program, I want to say, officially started in 2013. In 2014, there was a team, but they didn't play any games. Everybody redshirted. 2015 was the first season in which they played games. I think 15 and 16 were both meh-ish seasons. You were hovering around 6-7 wins, and then next 3 years they won 11 games at least every single year. I mean, for like a 5 to 7 year stretch, KSU was a perennial contender in FCS. And then after that, had a poor year, went 5-6, first losing record in school history 2 years ago, my freshman year of college. And then last year, it was a transition year. We played 3 teams that weren't Division I, weren't in a conference, weren't eligible for FCS postseason, redshirted half the team for half the year. So it was a down year as far as wins and losses go. And now we're here. So, I mean, this is only year 10 of the program. Still, I think we have the best winning percentage in Division I college football ever. But like, if you look deeper into it, it's like us than like Yale, because they won 17 national titles 100 years ago or whatever. But it's a cool little stat. But for the most part, it's been success. Couple of Big South championships in there. No national titles. I think we made one semifinal at the FCS level. But yeah, it's been short but relatively successful.
All right. For those not familiar with the Owls' offensive style, how would you describe it?
Still sort of to be determined this year. So they ran the triple option for a long time, first 8 years or so of the program, just the straight triple option like you used to see at Georgia Tech. Our coach, Brian Bohannon, came from the Paul Johnson tree. And then there are some new blocking rules that came in 2 years ago or so, and that kind of killed off the triple option. You still see some of the military schools trying to run it, but made it a lot tougher for us. We went out and hired Chris Klanakis as our OC, tried more of a spread type of option, or like a spread offense with some option elements, still a lot of QB draws, a lot of triple option type plays, just out of the gun instead. And this year, we hired Chandler Burks as our offensive coordinator, and he was the second starting quarterback for the team back in like 2017. And he ran, in the triple option. So we think that we're going to go more towards that, but also because of the rules that, got put in place 2 years ago or so, there's certain things that we still can't do. So we're all waiting ourselves. We don't really know, but it's going to be run heavy. I think that's the only thing I could tell you for sure.
All right. Well, let's get to the position where it all starts on offense, and that's the quarterback. Last season starter Jonathan Murphy has graduated. This leaves Davis Bryson as the only quarterback in the room with game experience for the Owls last year. He was 1 for 10 for 23 yards and had 174 yards rushing. They bring in Earl Woods III from Jacksonville State, came in after the spring. But is it safe to assume that this is Davis Bryson's job here heading into fall camp?
Heading into camp, sure. When game 1 rolls around, we'll see. There's also Caleb Johnson, who was at Louisville 2 years ago. He played JUCO for a year last year. Now he's here. They seem to be excited about him. The Coach Bohannon seems to be implying that this is Bryson's job to lose right now. But week 1, who knows? It's way too early to name a starter. But what I'm basically hearing is Bryson has earned the right to have a chance. But it's a long season. I predict we will see all 3 of those guys if they don't redshirt. So,
for those not familiar with Davis Bryson, how would you describe his game?
Lightning speed, smaller guy. He's only 5'9", 5'10", give or take. Really, really fast. I mean, he can get it done with his legs. Obviously, as you can tell from the numbers, the passing needs work. He had little to no success. I think he might have completed a second pass, but it was against one of the non-NCAA teams we played or whatever. But it's rocky. He's got to improve. But he's an athlete. He's going to be able to do some things, and he's not going to be an easy assignment for any defense. So like there's potential there, but we're going to need to see more out of him through the air if we want to do anything this year.
I would assume all the options there, like Bryson, are true dual threat, just given the offense. But is there one in particular you think maybe is a better passer than the others, or?
I think we're all really excited about Earl Woods from Jacksonville State. He was, like a high school player of the year at Alabama. I think he got a little bit of time at Jack State last year, but like he was, decently rated coming out of high school. He's got impressive film. It looks like he's got a good arm. And then Khalib Johnson is a bigger kid with a bigger arm, and there's a reason he was at a Power 5 school. They're going with, I think the reason they're going with Bryson as of right now, if that is the case, is just his experience within the offense. He's been around longer than those guys have. And so things are just going to run more smoothly right now. But I don't know. I selfishly want to see Earl Woods play because Jacksonville State is our most hated rival. And it would be cool if we poached a guy and then went and beat him with him. So
that would be pretty cool. All right, let's move over to the running game. The Owls bring back their leading rusher from a year ago, Michael Benefield. In addition to Benefield, Alexander Diggs, Josiah Clemens, and Gabriel Bignard also return. This seems like a very deep room with lots of game experience. How did that room shape up in the spring?
I think it's the best unit on the team outside of maybe the secondary. Michael Benefield was one of the few highlights from last year. He had a really, really solid year. I think he probably only played 8 games. Garland Benyard isn't really a true running back or wideout. He's kind of a Swiss Army knife, but he'll get carries, I'm sure. Diggs got some time last year. He's a solid second option workhorse. And then Josiah Clemens was a former walk-on that earned a scholarship. He's not going to get a ton of carries, but he's a good leader and voice in that room. It's definitely our most comfortable unit, and we're going to have to lean on them a lot. We leaned on them a lot last year because we couldn't really throw the ball moving offenses. And they kept us in games. We know we're not going to be able to score a whole lot, so we got to eat up clock. But yeah.
So in terms of workload, do you think Benefield's kind of the main guy and we'll get the lion's share of the carries there?
I think Benefield will get the most carries, and they're going to try and work Benyard in as much as possible. I think we'll see him in the backfield some. Diggs is going to get his reps too, for sure. And then if one of those guys gets down, Clemens is a solid option to step up and be RB2.
All right, moving over to the receivers. They returned a lot of guys last year, and I didn't really know where to put Benyard because, like you said, is he a running back? Is he a slot receiver? I wasn't really sure. So I talk about him here in the receivers as well. So, he returns. Blake Bohannon and Tykeem Wallace kind of highlight the returners. They did lose wide receiver Isaac Foster to graduation. Then they bring in Christian Moss from Virginia Tech and then Destin Thomas from Memphis. Thomas didn't come in until after spring practice. But what do we need to know about this wide receiver room here heading into 2024?
Yeah, it's a sneaky good unit, I think. You mentioned Benyard. I think he'll be in the slot some. They might move him outside some. Like I said, he's a Swiss Army knife. We're really excited about Christian Moss. He transferred over from Virginia Tech and actually got some playing time over there as a freshman. And the reason he's here is because this is home. He went to North Cobb High School, which is in Kennesaw. So we feel like we maybe got somebody better than we should have because of location, but we'll take it. I don't think Thomas played much at Memphis, but he was fairly well rated. We all hope we see him play. Bohannon brings a little bit of experience. He's always been a solid blocker. He's got steady hands. He's not going to torch anybody, but he'll run a good route. He'll get open. He'll be fine. And then Tykeem Wallace, I think we all want to see more. The kid he's probably the fastest dude on the team. He's a track star, really, really fast. I think he only scored one touchdown, and I mean, he went like 60 yards untouched on that one touchdown. So I think it's a decent unit. It's going to aid whatever weird quarterback situation we have going on. Like there are some real weapons there, and hopefully we get them the ball some more than we did last year.
So just kind of give folks some perspective. Binyard only played in 4 games last year, but he led the team in receiving yards and receiving touchdowns.
Yep.
He ran 70 routes, which was 4th most on the team, but he played 5 less games than last year. So, in the games he was playing, he was heavily involved in that passing offense. Do you think we can expect the same here in 2024?
Oh, yeah. And the offense was completely different. I would have to go back and look, but those 4 games that he played were the only games that we were pushing, 30 points every weekend. The other ones were real struggles, but just for clarity, the reason he played 4 games is because they were saving him. They were keeping his red shirt and, getting him some reps in those 4 games and then sitting him the rest of the year. But he's weapon number 1. He's the best player on the offensive side of the ball. This is for sure. And we're lucky to have held on to him, honestly.
So if you're the head coach, week 1, UTSA, who you rolling out there at receiver?
I think Moss will be out there. I think Bohannon will be out there a good bit. We'll see with Thomas. I think we'll see some of everybody. But I think the 2 guys day 1, as far as wideouts go, at least, are going to be Moss and Bohannon. That's just a prediction, though. Who knows?
All right. If you were to describe how tight ends are utilized in this offense to someone who has never caught a Kennesaw State game, how would you describe it?
Borderline foreign concept. You come from the triple option, and we didn't have a tight end for 8 years. And then we start working him in last year. Carson Kent he looked good in a few games. We didn't get him the ball a whole lot, though. It's still a thing we're trying to learn, I guess. We didn't get a ton of production from him last year, but we got some guys in that room. Hopefully we see more this year. It's going to be weird if we revert more towards the triple option again, like I think we will, but we keep the tight end room, how we're going to use them. Preston Daniels was what we call a B-back. So basically like the bigger running back within the triple option. And they moved him to tight end, and he's just an absolute unit. And so we've been waiting to see that potential be unlocked and see him run over somebody, catching a ball down the seam. But it's still unknown. We're still figuring it out. I would like to say that we're going to see real progression this year, but with another offensive coordinator switch, I doubt it a little bit.
All right. Moving over to the offensive line, and I got to tell you, it was fairly intriguing. We're interviewing folks from every single G5 team, so 64 teams, and I think you're like number 55. So we got 9 more to go, I think, after tonight, and I haven't seen anything like this yet when doing the research on the offensive line. And most guys kind of stay at one position, maybe 2. But it seems like your offensive line last year, like if they played tackle, they played left and right tackle. Same way with the guards. If they played guard, they played left and right guard, and then even the center played center, left guard, and right guard. So it just seemed like a lot of movement and a lot of versatility on that offensive line. Can you kind of share? Is there a reason for that, or they were just trying to find the right mix? And how did that unit look in the spring?
Well, you're very nice by calling it versatility. That was just kind of what had to happen. Last year was just a mess. And it had to be. It's not me complaining. But last year you had so many guys, number 1, get hurt. We had a lot of injuries on the O-line. Then we had a lot of guys that we wanted to save, so we redshirted. So, I mean, it wasn't just the offensive line, it was the whole team. You're just seeing a different lineup basically every week. And the O-line got so thin and so confusing that, guys had to step up and play positions that they weren't recruited to play. In your notes, you said something about Al Hogan. He was a 5th-year senior. He was all over the place, but he stayed healthy, so he was always in the lineup. I mean, it was chaos. And there should be more stability this year because at least we get to stick with the same group. And we brought a lot of kids in. So it needs to be better, but we're expecting it to be.
Do you have any predictions on who maybe starts their week 1 versus UTSA?
Honestly, I couldn't give you anything. We brought so many JUCO guys in. I mean, we went the route of going and finding guys out in the middle of nowhere in Iowa, Kansas. I think we got a kid from Montana. And it's just like, yeah, it's whoever's the best in the camp. We brought so many guys in that some of them got to be good, right?
Yeah, absolutely. All right. If you have to pick an offensive player to have a breakout type season here in 2024, who are you going to pick?
I'm going to go with Carson Kent, the tight end. I know I said that I don't know how the tight end situation is going to go, but he looked really nice when he did play last year. I think there's an urgency to get him the ball. He's kind of being used in some of like the school marketing stuff. He's a good looking player. That's who I'd have to pick.
All right. Let's move over to the defensive side of the ball. How would you describe this defense in terms of scheme and personnel, maybe, to folks that haven't seen it before?
Well, it's also kind of an unknown. We lost our defensive coordinator, Nate Burton, last year to Troy. So we replaced him with Greg Harris, who was our linebackers coach, who was just promoted internally. It's kind of an unknown. The secondary did some good things last year. Our pass rush was not very good. Linebackers are young. It's inexperienced, somewhat on the front seven. There are some good things. They kept us in a lot of games last year. And I think we are really excited about the secondary. But up front, there are questions for sure.
So speaking about those guys up front, did anyone kind of stand out in the spring, or who do you think needs to step up the most here in fall camp?
I think the guy this year is going to be Puda Walker. He had a really, really nice year last year, big number 99. He was a D2 transfer guy. So, he's a grinder. Big fan of what he did last year. Seems like a great kid. I mean, not to spoil who my breakout player is going to be, but that's who it's going to be.
All right. Let's move over to the linebacking group. They returned their leading tackler from a year ago, Jalen Barnum, as well as the third leading tackler, and Donelius Johnson. How did the linebackers look in the spring, and did anyone stand out for them?
I mean, you got about what you expected. Both those guys are going to, fill up the stat sheet, record a lot of tackles. But that was, I guess, one of our weaker units last year. It's good to have those guys back, but in particular, I couldn't tell you.
All right, let's move back to what you said was the strength of this defense. You felt like the defensive backfield. They did lose DeAndre Morris to Georgia Southern, and Markeith Montgomery graduated, but they do have a room with some game experience. They added Quay McCoy from UL Monroe and Christopher Townsend from USF, who comes in after the spring. But what should we expect from this defensive backfield here in 2024?
The theme the last couple of years has been a lot of interceptions. Now we have a bunch of ball hawks. Losing Markeith Montgomery and also DeAndre hurts. We also lost Chance Gamble, who was one of the guys who redshirted last year. He also followed Morris to Southern. So that does hurt. But Sidney Porter had a really nice year last year. He's also a transfer from a lower level. And it's just been a consistent unit for us for the last couple of years. I think we're going to be just fine there.
All right. Well, you already spilled this next question, so I'm going to ask it in a little bit of a different way. So you mentioned that Puda Walker was going to be your breakout player here for this defense in 2024. What about him makes you think he's going to have a breakout season, and what does he kind of bring to that defensive line that might be different from others?
I think it's all about the grind. Like I said, I've got a bit of a soft spot for guys who came out of D2. I think he went to West Florida, came in and just immediately impressed. Real big dude. He's a leader. I think he embodies everything about our program. The whole motto is EAT, which stands for effort, attitude, toughness. And I think he's, the perfect representation of that. I think he's going to have a big year statistically. filling up that D line.
All right. You've alluded to this a couple times now, and I noticed it certainly when I was doing my homework on Kennesaw State, and I noticed like you said, there was a lot of guys that only played 4 games in 2023. So I got to assume that was clearly part of the strategy to kind of maintain that year of eligibility and preparation for this move up to FBS and Conference USA.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. So it made last year a bit of a mess, but we weren't really playing for anything last year. That's kind of hard to say, and you didn't want the players to think that, but it was. I mean, there was nothing for us to go win, so kept a lot of guys with that extra year of eligibility. Made it through. I think we retained more players than we thought we would, so we made it through. For the most part, it was successful.
Yeah, it's an interesting strategy. I think you've seen teams not do it, and then like Sam Houston State, they clearly did it as well. In making their move up to FBS. Now, I would say for them, I feel like people would look at their record and say, well, it didn't work out, but Sam Houston State, I felt like was really a snake bitten team last year. They were a really good team. They just couldn't close out games, and so I don't know. I feel like that strategy played a big part in them. At least they were at least competitive in every game, right? They might not have won as many games as folks would have liked to see, but certainly kind of that strategy certainly paid dividends in terms of them being competitive in each and every game.
Yeah, 100%. I watched a few Sam Houston games last year, and they had a few really unlucky draws. And then, honestly, we blew our game against them. We should have won that one. But it's misleading to a lot of people because they look at us and they're like, "Oh, they went 3-6 last year. Like, what are they doing in FBS?" Well, it's like, well, there's more to the story. There wasn't one consistent lineup at any point throughout the year. I mean, it would be like you play Furman. And most of your A guys are going. Then the next week you play Tennessee Tech, and you're resting half of them, and then you're playing San Jose State, and you want to go win that game because it's a chance to beat an FBS opponent. You're throwing those other guys back out there, and there's just not a whole lot of continuity.
Sure.
And somehow I think, lost every game by 1 possession or less. I'd have to go check that again, but it was either 5 or all 6 that they were all nail biters. So the 3-6 record is not a true indicator of, I think, where the roster is.
All right. Now with spring practice over, which position group or groups do you feel is the most concerning?
Can I say kicker?
Absolutely.
We had some rough goes kicking last year. Probably cost us a game or two. The kid we had is gone now. I want to say graduated early and decided to walk and forego his last year of eligibility. We went out and got a kid from Georgia Southern who shanked a 30-yarder in the spring game. So that's not good, but there was no consistency there last year. We couldn't rely on anybody to make a kick at any point. So that needs to be better, or it will blow us a couple of games this year.
We're probably only a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks away from fall camp opening up. So I got to assume like the roster's pretty much set. But do you think they might be still looking to add anything through the portal, or you think they're pretty much done?
Look, man, if they hold open tryouts every summer and fall, if somebody walks in and is good enough to play, then they'll take them. But I think at this point in the calendar, we're pretty set.
What would you say is the main strength of this team?
Experience in the running game. There are some real weapons on offense. It's just going to be a matter of getting them the ball because quarterback is one of the biggest question marks. But yeah, I mean, the offensive firepower, if we can get them the ball, that's what I'll say.
All right. Not only do you guys, have the challenge of moving up to FBS, it's kind of a whole new world now, right? With the transfer portal and NIL. What kind of impacts have you seen that have there at Kennesaw State?
Well, we don't have a whole lot of money. So it works against us a little bit. we live in the reality of being a mid-major athletic department. So if players overperform here, they're going to the next level. But we can all go poach FCS guys who killed at that level. So we get that advantage now. It's what people need to realize about KSU is the school itself is really young. The school's only been around since 1963, and it's only been a 4-year school for 30, 40 years. So the older alumni base is not that big, not that old, not that rich. There's not a ton of donor money coming in, and I think that'll change over the next couple of decades. But we're not there yet. The budget is just not there. It is in the metro Atlanta area, so you do have smaller NIL opportunities for players, and they've taken advantage of that. I mean, you see our players on billboards promoting different restaurants, stores, little things like that. So you get kind of the small town feel of it a little bit, but nobody's coming in and dropping $1 million on a quarterback here.
It seems more and more that the demands of a head coach are really turning into a general manager. You got recruiting freshmen, recruiting the portal. You got trying to retain your own roster, and then you add fundraising on top of it. And maybe they're less involved in the X's and O's than they would like to be. What do you see there with Coach Bohannon there at Kennesaw State?
Well, he's been here a long time. I think that they're going to be patient with him for another year or two, just because you're moving up and you can't really ask that much of him these next 2 years or so. But he's been here a long time, and if we're not heading in the right direction, I think they'll move on at some point. That being said, I don't think we're there yet. He is praised by all of his players, current and former. Seems like a great leader. Seems like a damn good football coach. But he's also a triple option guy, and that's what he knows. And now he's in a tough position where he's scrambling because of what he knows. He can't really go anywhere else. So he's not just going to leave. But we have faith in him for now. We'll see what happens. We'll see how he adapts and adjusts to this new NIL era. But like I said, the athletic department knows that we're at a disadvantage. So I don't think they'll come down on him too hard for that reason.
What does success look like for the Owls here in 2024, their first season in Conference USA?
I think beating an FBS team, because that's something we've never done. I mean, like it's a low goal, but this is something that Bohannon has said a couple of times. Like, let's just go get one. If we go 2-10 next year, none of us will be pissed. The fan base is, I think, fully prepared for that to happen, and it'll just be cool to be there and to participate and to build on things for the future. I hope I'm wrong. I hope they surprise me, go win 10 games next year and, pull a Jacksonville State and make a bowl game on a technicality. But that's just not the expectation.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today. We've talked offense, defense, even some special teams there with the kickers. But is there anything else you want to share or think that we should know about this 2024 Kennesaw State Owls football team?
Look, man, we're going to be on TV for the first time ever, Wednesday nights when you got nothing else to do. If I can't promise you anything else, I can promise you some interesting football. It's a creative coaching staff. You're going to see some weird schemes. We play in the smallest stadium in FBS. It's a bit of an oddity, but it's fun. So when we're on a Wednesday night and nobody else is, give us a watch.
Absolutely. Definitely be tuning in. Well, Kai, thank you again for taking time out of your day to spend with us and share your knowledge. We greatly appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me, man. I enjoyed it.
If you're watching on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. And if you're listening to in podcast form, please rate and review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Thank you all for your support. And until the next time, we are the G5 Hive.